Remind yourself, only you have the power to get off and recalibrate. The Creative Mornings Cologne shows this month's exploration of restart. Marie Mears illustrated the theme, and it's being presented globally by our partner, Adobe. Clay Nutting. He is a lifelong serial creative entrepreneur. What I love about his story is that he's never been tied to one single industry. He's fueled by his interests and follows his passions, and he's crafted an eclectic resume, but somehow it still makes sense. In college in Massachusetts, Clay co-founded a music and arts nonprofit called Concerts for Charity. Shortly after graduating, he moved back to California, and in 2014 began to throw shows at an art loft downtown, raising money for music and art education projects. He's remained a strong advocate and supporter of the arts today. He's worked in sales and marketing. In 2012, Clay followed his passion for hospitality and beer and co-founded a popular Midtown restaurant. He was also the co-founder of two multi-day music festivals. Kind of eclectic. Today, he's the owner of the very popular and beautiful Cannon East Sacramento. It's right around the corner, and it's a restaurant that kind of brings all of these things together. I'm really happy to have Clay here today, and let's welcome him.
How's it going, everyone? So first and foremost, it's an incredible honor to be in a room with so many people that I admire. I walked around and talked to quite a few people that I look up to, that I consider some of my creative mentors in the community. So the fact that you're here today to hear me talk about whatever I'm about to talk about, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Before we get started, I wanted to kind of give my 30-second pitch that everyone else had given. Obviously, our brothers and sisters all throughout California are dealing with some incredible tragedy, and everyone's trying to do their little part to help out and chip in. So as Rebecca mentioned, I own a restaurant called Cannon. It's in East Sacramento. It's only a few blocks away. This weekend on Saturday and Sunday for brunch, we're open from 10 to 2. If you come in and enjoy any adult beverage, we'll donate $1 to some fund. I'm not sure. I'm open to some suggestions if you guys have some ideas. So that's what we're going to do this weekend. So if you come in for brunch, purchase a delicious Bloody Mary or mimosa or something like that, we'll donate $1 from each of those to some charity to hopefully help in some small way. There are other places around Sacramento that are doing some really cool things, so I encourage you to take a look at that. I know Magpie just put something out yesterday in which you can pay any amount for a bowl of soup. So you can pay $1 or you can pay $100, and they'll be making a donation there. So if anyone has any suggestions on places to donate, I'm all ears. Just trying to do our part for our friends up north and down south. So today is an interesting day. I typically don't get very nervous at these things, but I have a couple of special guests in the house. My wife, Lexi, and my son, Hudson, are here. And I think this is the first time they've ever heard me do one of these types of things. So I've got judging eyes on me right now. As Rebecca mentioned, I own a restaurant called Cannon currently, and hopefully for a long time. Good 20 years would be great. Previously, I had co-founded a couple other restaurants in Sacramento, a couple music festivals. I founded a nonprofit in college, but also one recently called DBA Arts. We helped incubate a couple of projects, including Art Hotel, Art Street, and Capital Dance Project, which is a annual ballet event that takes place at the Crest Theater. It's really amazing. So those are a couple of the endeavors that I've been involved in. But the topic today is restart. Is this the button thing? Let's see. There we go. So some of the images that I'm using for my presentation, I have the credits at the end, but they're from some artists that were involved in some of those projects that I mentioned. So they might be familiar to you if you've been there. So restarting is something that I'm really familiar with. I've done it quite often in my life and in my career. And it kind of goes all the way back. And essentially what I'm hoping to accomplish today is to kind of tell a little bit of a story of my personal and entrepreneurial journey. And, you know, like in my professional career, I've always kind of gleaned information from mentors and peers. And that's certainly what I hope happens today. Hopefully you take something away from what I am sharing. If not, at least you can come and have a drink at my restaurant and we'll all donate to a good cause. So that will be, at the very least, what we get out of this. So I was born in Sacramento, but I was actually raised in Massachusetts. My parents met in a small town called Slough House, which is probably about 20 minutes east of here. They're known for their sweet corn. It's very delicious. My grandparents were hop farmers, so they worked on the hop farms in Slough House, which, interesting fact about Sacramento is that at one point we were one of the biggest hop producers in the world. So we were producing hops for some of the biggest beer companies in the United States for sure. And so anyhow, that was a big industry. My mom had a big family there. They all worked on the hop farms. And there was a small restaurant called the Slough House Inn. It's been there for a long time. Well, my dad was a Vietnam vet. He served in the Vietnam War, and after his tour of duty, he was doing some kind of active service stuff at one of the nearby air bases. And like young people do, they met at a bar and fell in love. And they had myself and my two younger brothers here in the Sacramento area. So my dad was adopted as a young child and was raised in Massachusetts on a farm. My parents had me and my two younger brothers, and so his parents, my grandparents, gave him a call one day and said, "Hey, look, we're getting older and we have a farm. You have 3 boys that are able-bodied and, you know, seemingly capable of doing farm stuff. Why don't you come out here, take care of the farm, and then when we pass, we'll leave the farm to you." So, good deal for my parents, not so much for me and my brothers. So I was about 4 years old when we moved to Massachusetts, and the farm was pretty small. It's about 30 acres, which in farm kind of size is not necessarily big enough to be like a commercially viable, kind of farm. It was more, back in the day, you grew things for yourself, your family, and some of your neighbors. We baled hay, and we had chickens and that kind of stuff. As all farms do, kind of taught me a lot of really valuable lessons. One of them was that I did not want to be a farmer. I super respect farmers. I was not afraid of the hard work, although there were definitely times where like my friends would be riding their bikes by the farm, and it'd be like right after school, and I'd be like throwing hay up onto a truck, and they'd be like, "Hey, come ride your bike." I'm like, I have 30 acres to tend to here. So that was a bummer. In my town, which was kind of unique, there really weren't a lot of farms. There was like maybe 3 of them in this small town, and then everyone else was more suburban. So I was an outlier from the get-go on that. But what the farm kind of taught me, the fact that I didn't want to be a farmer was a big realization for sure. And that kind of had me, as I got a little bit older, drifting towards more city kind of oriented things. So there's a city about 10 to 15 miles outside of the small town I grew up in called Worcester, Massachusetts, central Massachusetts. And it's about the second largest city in Massachusetts. They were kind of gritty. It had a little similarity to, like a cross between Sacramento and like in Oakland. It had a lot of industry, but it wasn't like, the glitz of like San Francisco to Boston kind of thing. But what they did have was an art scene. And taking my passion for not farming and the fact that there was these cool and interesting things happening in this city that I was just kind of discovering, I ended up stumbling into an all-ages music venue called The Wag. So through my formative years leading up to this, one of the things, again, driven by my passion to not farm, was what was my passion. So I started to figure that I kind of liked, in a weird way, I was a really weird kid. I liked marketing. So we had great commercials in my day. I'm 41, so I don't know what age demographic I'm speaking with here, but I think there's some peers and probably a lot of younger folks as well. But the commercials were great. They'd be like, flying, airplanes and transformers and stuff, and you'd be like, oh wow, that's cool. And then you'd get them, and they wouldn't do any of that. You'd be like, how is this not flying? So I was like, smart. I like what they did there. They tricked me into thinking it was flying. I spent my allowance on that, and here we are. I kind of developed a bit of an acumen for it, and as a result, when I was hanging out with all my friends at this all-ages music venue, back in the day, and they don't really have them anymore, they used to have these A&R reps. There were people who would go out to different music scenes, and they would find bands, put them on a label, and give them small contracts. So, we were all like 14, 15 years old, just had no idea what we were doing. And someone came up to my friend's band, which I can't say the name of because it's totally crude. So, but 14 years old, you gotta think, that was in. And they're like, hey, we want to sign your band. I was not in a band, I couldn't play, but my friends did. And he was like, who's your manager? And they're like, oh, Clay's our manager. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's do this. What are we talking here, fellas? How many pizzas do we get? I had no idea. They're probably still paying for the contract that I signed them up for. I have no idea what I did. But that was kind of one of the first, entry points into being an entrepreneur for me, which was totally happenstance, but also the fact that I was just totally welcoming of that opportunity, not knowing what was going to happen. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had some confidence that we'd figure it out and no one was going to die. So that was kind of my line of thinking at the point. I started to, as a result, promote shows. So my friends were playing in bands. I wanted other people to see them. And that really became something that I started to develop a passion for, and really still continues to this day. When my friends or peers or people in the community are doing something cool, I want other people to discover it as well. And so one of my passions that I started to develop was walking down the hallway in school and being like, hey, have you ever been to a show before? Like, there's this all-ages venue, this band that has this name that I can't say is really awesome. You should totally come and see them. And then when I'd see people show up to the show, that totally, gave me a kick. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, I asked people to come. They came, they enjoyed themselves, like there's something here. And at the time, I probably didn't even realize all the things that I ended up learning were kind of tools that I developed as a kid, I was developing. So fast forward, went to college, because of my kind of connection to music, we had a friend who, for some reason, I have no idea why, but he managed a pretty significant sized venue called the Palladium in Worcester. It's about the size, it's probably about as big as like Warfield in San Francisco. It's big. We have big shows come through at the time. This was like in the mid-90s. We had like Eminem and Outkast and Erykah Badu and Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, they're pretty big artists at the time and were emerging too. Obviously, Eminem would play a much bigger venue now, but at the time, again, dating myself, like late 90s or so, those are the type of venues he was playing. So we had this crazy access. So what do you do with access? You take advantage of it. I put all my friends' bands on to open. So like my friends like gutter punk or like metal band would be opening for like Erykah Badu. Now, you know, it's like the doors open at 6, no one's gonna see them, but still there would be a time like someone peek out of the dressing room like, what the hell? We had open reign. So that access provided a unique opportunity for me and my college roommate. So my roommate, who was equally as entrepreneurial and was developing kind of their passion for being an entrepreneur, we were in a class where the entire semester you had to develop kind of this idea for a nonprofit, so this imaginary nonprofit. So we took our passion for music and the fact that we had this access to this music venue, and we decided that we would essentially introduce community nonprofits to a concert-going audience. So you had all these kind of more younger demographic going to these shows, and then you'd have like the animal shelter and setting up a booth in the auditorium. Now, as crazy as it sounds, because it's pretty common now, this was the late 90s, and like that type of like experience wasn't really happening. And also, just want to remind you, the internet, I had to go to the library to use the internet. It's very strange, but that's true. That actually happened. So even if that kind of stuff was happening out in the universe, I didn't really know about it. And so a lot of the nonprofits obviously didn't know about it, because I'm a kid at the point, 19 or so. If I didn't know how to use the internet, they sure as heck didn't. And so they loved it. They loved the access that they were getting. They were signing up young volunteers and getting young people to donate and all that stuff. And so our professor liked it so much, he encouraged us and helped us actually form a 501c3. So here I am, 19 years old, in college, again, not knowing what the heck I'm doing, which is a theme you'll see run throughout my entire life. We had a nonprofit. Did I know how to run a nonprofit? No. Did I, know the ins and outs of board management? No. But we had a platform, we were fumbling through it, we were figuring it out. Another weird thing that happened, a lot of weird things in my life, was that through that nonprofit, we met someone who owned a bunch of AV equipment. They moved to North Carolina, and there's a venue there called something like Orange or Orange Crush, maybe if someone's out from North Carolina, anyhow, we'll chat later. Doesn't matter, it was a venue, he had camera equipment, he started interviewing these bands. It was, now fast forward, it was probably about 2004 or so, when Rock the Vote was happening and a lot of movement for signing people up to vote was happening. Somehow this organization called Headcount got a hold of the footage that we were collecting of these artists who were talking and encouraging people to vote, and like why music was connected to social justice and things of that nature. And then HBO reached out to us. And then we ended up premiering it on HBO, and then every once in a while this thing plays on Sundance Channel. We get a check for 14 cents in the mail. It's very exciting. The reason I'm telling this story, and the reason I can kind of circle back to the topic today, is that most of my career has been about not necessarily restarting. I guess if you kind of reframe the word, restarting is also starting, right? And so in each of these kind of circumstances, I was really kind of following a path that was presented to me through some door in the universe opening up, and I would step through it and say, okay, well, what's next? And so this Concerts for Charity thing happens, and my parents were like, look, your grandparents have passed away. They didn't say, I knew that, and I was just kind of paraphrasing how it all went down. They did? Why didn't anyone tell me? No, I knew. What they're essentially saying was they knew that they weren't going to leave the farm to me. I've made my case very clear about my desire not to farm, and they both worked jobs. They both had full-time jobs, and then to come home, I'm in college. My younger brothers had just graduated high school. That's a lot to take care of, and they're just like, you know what, we're going to sell the farm, and we're going to move back to California, where your mom's family is from. Now, I had visited a couple times, we'd come in the summer times and things like that, so I had a relationship with my family here. But if you're raised from the age of 4 to 22 or 23 at this point, I mean, all of your entire universe is where you are. It's all I knew. And so I said, I'm going to drive my mom and a big trailer across the country to California. I'm going to get my family situated. My dad was following with the truck himself. I'll kind of give it a couple months, see how it goes, and we'll take it from there. So I get to California, which I am familiar with, so I'm not unfamiliar. It's not, a shiny new thing for me, although what was a shiny new thing for me was the weather. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, it's winter, there's no snow, I don't have to shovel. That's good, okay. And then I kind of put my feelers out there for work. I got a job, which is very interesting. It was as essentially a health educator for Planned Parenthood in Stockton. So that's random, but it was cool and fun and interesting, but I was living in Stockton, and next thing you know, I was there for about a year, and I'm like, okay, I'm in California now for a year. Am I really going to kind of stick my foot in the ground here? And, all of my friends and my life that I left back there was there. Although, you check back in on your friends. I'm like, hey, what are you up to? They're like, we're at the bar. I'm like, okay, so I'm missing a ton. Excellent. Not really. My passion for music really drew me back to Sacramento. And so Stockton didn't have a ton going on in the music scene. There were a couple of things going on, but not really my speed at the time. And so I'd get the News and Review or Alive and Kicking at the time, which was a great publication that Jerry Perry produced. And I would find stuff to do that was happening in Sacramento. I'm like, whoa, Sacramento's got, shows going on and all that stuff. So I would go to Old Ironsides and stuff like that. But I still didn't really know much about the landscape. So I walked into a salon that was owned by Marcy Landgraf, who owns a salon now called Muse. And she had posters and stuff up on the wall of shows. I went in and I said, what do you guys do in Sacramento for fun? And we kind of just were talking a little bit about shows and stuff like that. And they asked me what I did. And so I kind of just said, well, I throw parties and I raise money and give it away. And she's like, that's cool. I have an art loft in downtown Sacramento. Do you want to throw shows? I said, sure. Let's do this. And I just started throwing shows. She introduced me to some bands, and essentially it's how I got to meet a lot of people that I know now in Sacramento, was through this, again, universe opening up a door. I was like, what the heck is on the other side? I don't know. Let's walk through, see what happens, and got to meet some really amazing people. From there, I met a friend named Adam Saki. I think we were throwing shows at Cuff's was known as Cuffs Urban Apparel. It's called Cuffs now. It's a clothing boutique on J Street. And he was in a band called the New Humans. He was like, hey, I want to throw an electronic music festival. I was like, that sounds cool. Let's do it. And Sacramento had this interesting kind of history where there was a group of artists called the Command Collective that used to do shows at Metro. I think it's a coffee house across from McClatchy or somewhere over there. And at the time, when you were playing electronic shows, you would have to like bring a wheelbarrow of electronic. Now you can just bring that, and you're like, I'm a DJ, and I'm making music, and this is cool. Back then, you'd have to like have a trailer of electronics, and it was like a lot of analog stuff. And anyhow, they ended up doing some really cool, influential things. Dusty Brown and Tycho Scott Hansen, who's the incredible international relevant artist and designer. So we did it. We threw this music festival. At the same time, my former business partner Mike was throwing his own music festival called Launch. Well, he kind of needed a little help one year, and I connected with him and helped, book. I think it was 2011 at the Greens Hotel, and he came to me afterwards, and he goes, I've got this idea for a restaurant. Have you ever thought about doing a restaurant? I was like, yeah, kinda. I like bringing people together. I kind of like the idea of, having a space where we can kind of create this hospitality environment where people are like coming and enjoying what you're doing. It's kind of like a show, except every day, 24/7, which is what I now realize. If you look at my eyes, that's what's happening. So it really appealed to me. And then he's like, okay, cool. It's this idea for this sausage kitchen called Lowbrow. I was like, dude, that's genius. Let's do this. He's like, okay, cool. Have you ever done anything like this before? I said, no. I went to Google. I was like, how do you open a restaurant? I had a tiny, tiny bit of experience. So I helped Olivia and Trisha move their Bows and Arrows location to the 19th and S location, and went through a little bit of the permitting process, but not, it was barely enough to really know what we were doing. So we went and were kind of scouting for locations, and kind of turned out that 20th and K location was becoming available, where Lowbrow currently is. So the amazing thing is that, this is prime real estate in the heart of Midtown, and here we are, two, music promoters coming to Mike Heller with an idea for a restaurant that we've never operated before. It was pretty, out there. And so we got together, and Mike Heller is incredible. He's a passion guy, a vision guy, and he got it, and he's like, okay, do you guys have any experience? We're like, no. We'll be right back. So we went to our friends at the Shady Lady, and we said, can you help us land this opportunity? They were like, this idea is awesome, we want to be a part of it. They went with us to our next pitch to Mike. And we're like, Mike, we got the team, the idea, the vision, the design, it's gonna be great. He goes, cool, do you have any money? We're like, no. So we went out into the universe, turning over every rock possible, and honestly, there were times where both of us would look at each other and we'd be like, who's paying for the coffee? We're like trying to ask people for, investment, and, none of us can even buy the coffee. We're like, all right, I'll buy the $35 coffee because that's how much our bank fees were after we got that, oh man, insufficient. $35 coffee, great. But after many, many, many rocks being turned over, and really, again, not having a ton of experience in that world, we figured out how to get it done, really with our passion, our story, our heart, our vision, all those things that we were wearing on our sleeves, trying to convince people, like, yes, people will want to come and eat sausage. This is a thing that we believe. Got to be real passionate about that in order to convince someone that that's true. So, we had done some cool things together, and including, bringing Launch to a bigger platform. Things didn't work out, as many of you might know. I left that partnership about a year and a half ago to start Canon. So Canon is definitely a little more my speed than Lowbrow. I really love that restaurant, but there's a line out the door on Monday night at midnight. I've got 2 kids now. That's just not my thing. But Canon I saw as kind of this neighborhood restaurant. I reached out to someone that I really admired, Brad Checky, who was from Sacramento, went out, earned a Michelin star in Calistoga, and I said, have you ever thought about coming back to Sacramento, opening a restaurant? And he said yes, maybe over a couple beers that helped. And we developed the vision for what we are doing today in East Sacramento. So, oh yeah, what am I? We already did that. Who am I? So, one question that I often get, and I try to make myself available to anyone. I've been fortunate enough in my career, as you've heard, there are plenty of times where I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And that remains true today in a lot of ways. But, I always sought mentors, whether they wanted to or not. I always kind of make myself available to people as well, just because of the kind of courtesy that's been offered to me from a lot of really incredible people in this community. And that is one thing. There's many things about Sacramento, I should say, but that are really incredible. But the fact that if you look at this community in here, I don't think you could turn behind you or to the side of you and ask of something of your neighbor, and they wouldn't be willing to help you, especially on your path to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. I think there's a real, kind of like, it's part of our DNA, I think, is like we have this kind of small community kind of mindset where we want to see each other be successful. And so I was lucky to have mentors available to me. So I make myself available to other people. And as a result, I get asked this question a lot. How did you do it? How do you start? What do you do next? And I think, one of the biggest, I guess, barriers that a lot of people have in their kind of entrepreneurial journey really comes down to fear and failure. I think a lot of people are really passionate about what they're doing. In some cases, they're maybe a little uncertain about what they're doing, but it usually is tied, that uncertainty is usually tied to, like, what happens if it doesn't work, right? I'm here to say I don't know. I think there's no real magic, answer to that question. But one of the things that I figured out was how to be comfortable with what was on the other side of that door that the universe is opening up for me. I'm not comfortable because it's my nature. In fact, it probably will shock a lot of people, but I kind of consider myself a bit of an introvert. Like, I'm not like super comfortable going out and networking and, hey, how's it going, and all of that, and even like doing this kind of stuff. Like, I made myself comfortable through practice. It's not unlike anything else. And also, your comfort with uncomfort is really something that can be developed. One of the things that I tell people who, ask, questions about or have a passion or want to take it to the next level or maybe even just start or just begin is to embrace the uncertainty. There's uncertainty every day of our life. Getting out of bed, going to work, going to school, doing anything. And somehow we make it through to the end of the day, and if you have an entrepreneurial idea, it's no different. it starts somewhere, and then it needs to go somewhere else next. I know that sounds very simple, but sometimes it's as kind of simple as just starting. What does starting mean? Great ideas and great passion always find their way to the light. You know, I feel like even if you're not the extrovert and putting yourself out there, in your busy working on your idea at home, or you're not, or you're not comfortable networking and doing all those things that some people are, it doesn't matter. Your passion and your idea will eventually find its way to where it needs to be, but you're also the driver behind that, and it's the uncertainty that I think a lot of people have a tough challenge embracing. And I guess my example for you is that I was never comfortable with it myself. I just practiced it. I did it a lot. I did it often. I've failed. I've fumbled. I tripped up. There's been challenging days. There's been challenging years. And hopefully those will be few and far between for entrepreneurs out here, and including myself. But that's just part of the reality of taking your idea and putting it out into the universe. One of the things that I've always found helpful in my journey is finding your path. So if you are having uncertainty or having difficulty launching idea or bringing your idea to fruition, always find that if there's a path or a manifesto, something that you're driving towards, you always have that. Despite the circumstances, despite the fact that you fall off the path, you know where that path is. So as an example, I didn't want to be a farmer. I've made that really clear. That was my first path. The second path was, I had a passion for helping my friends be discovered. A lot of my artist friends, and it continues today, that's why I was very passionate about Art Street and Art Hotel and other projects like that, because you have these brilliant, amazing artists out in our community, and not all of them are really good about promoting themselves. They're not good about creating the platforms where people can see them. They're not good at having a platform and then figuring out how to get people to come and check them out. And that was something that I discovered I had a bit of a passion and a knack for, and so that became part of my path and part of my manifesto. My manifesto is simple. It's do cool things. That's it. I don't try and overcomplicate it. I ask myself, are you doing something cool? Yes, keep going. Are you doing something not cool? No, stop. That's kind of my path. It sounds, again, simple, but I think a lot of these lessons, or a lot of these kind of anecdotes and things like that about finding your way and moving through this entrepreneurial journey, restarting, starting, it really always comes back to those simple things. My day-to-day life is about calibration. If you're on your journey, on your path towards whatever entrepreneurial endeavor you're on, whether it's at work, in your career, or with a hobby or with a passion or anything like that, your day-to-day life is about calibrating. Nothing is ever going to happen exactly the way that you planned it to, and in fact, it shouldn't. But the ability to calibrate and being comfortable with that and not being afraid to say, this isn't working, it's still on my path, it's cool, I like it, doing cool things, but it's shifting on me. I'm going to just try and tweak it on the way. Calibration is my day-to-day life. Seek mentors. This is what worked for me. I know it's I honestly, a job that I got in Sacramento is at Threefold Communications. I didn't have any educational, academic experience in that field, but I wanted to do it. So I reached out to Gordon Fowler, who owns Threefold, and Kim Tucker, and I said, I want to work for you guys. I think I'm going to be good at this, which is always a great way to start a job interview. And anyhow, I got the job. It was great. They're awesome. But even with mentors, I did the same thing, like Warren Smith, who was the president of Sac Republic. I've seen him at events and things like that, and I just reached out to him. I said, I want to pick your brain. And he said, yes. And that's why I always make myself available, because people like Warren has made himself available. But if you're not comfortable with that, the other thing to do is emulate, observe. I know not everyone feels comfortable going out and asking people for advice or asking mentors, but if you hang back and emulate and watch people who you admire doing the thing that you want to do, you can really glean a lot from them. So it's kind of stalkerish, but I've done it. It works. It's good. It's helped me get where I am today, so no shame in my game. And then the other thing is just reminders. I used to do this a lot more than I have recently. The Canon is so new; it's been really, consuming, which is great. I love it. But I'm an idea guy too. I have tons and tons of journals. I would write in them ideas, and sometimes when the ideas sucked, I would not use that journal anymore. I'm like, that journal's bad. I'm not using it. But I always found, that writing reminders to myself, because I do really believe in that kind of golden rule of manifesting destiny, that your thoughts become your actions and your actions become your habits, and making sure that we remind ourselves things like, fear and risk, it's inevitable. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in our life. And it's no different if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to bring your idea forward. It's going to be there. And so it's about pushing through that and being comfortable with that. And even if all goes wrong, knowing that it's fine. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Practice. Again, I don't think of myself as necessarily a natural at anything. And I just continued to do things that I thought were on my path of doing cool things that eventually made me a little better at that. By no means am I claiming to be an expert at anything, but things that I was totally unfamiliar with, signing my friends up for bad contracts, opening restaurants, whatever it was, I put myself out there, I practiced, I tried, I learned, I gathered information, I took mentorship information to try and make myself better every day at that thing that I was enjoying, that I had a passion for, that I thought was cool, and it's no secret there. Another mentor once told me that there's no such thing as luck, it's all hard work. I tend to believe that. While I feel very blessed, fortunate, lucky about a lot of things in my life, including my family and the job that I have, the fact that people like coming to my restaurant and eating, that's great. That's what you want. It also is a result of all the work, the hard work that you put into the thing that you're passionate about. Doubt, uncertainty, failure, these, again, I think a lot of people look at what they might consider someone who's successful and them themselves might be having a tough time, or they might be doubting or feeling uncertain about what they're doing. That person that you might be putting up on that pedestal or thinking is successful has had those same doubts, those same fears, those same lonesome, scary times as anyone else, and it's part of the process. It just is. And that's why, again, the mentor thing is so important for me, and why I make myself available to others is because sometimes you just need to hear that. You need to hear that other entrepreneurs have struggled, other entrepreneurs have failed, and even though they may seem like they've got it all, they don't. And that realization about the human condition and being an entrepreneur is something that I remind myself of all the time, if not every day. And, resilience is earned. You don't become resilient unless you get the scars and you put yourself out there and you get your butt kicked and run over, and it's your ability to bounce back and keep your head up. And the fact that you believe so much in the thing that you're passionate about and what you're contributing to the world, your family, your neighbor, those are the things that keep you coming back. And then the final one is just living in the moment. One of the things that I have to remind myself of constantly, because I'm such a, fanatic for the stuff that I do, is just to remember to be grateful. It's okay to not be okay with where you are, but you should be okay with who you are at the moment, at the time. Don't ever beat yourself up because you're not where you want to be yet. Who you are is perfect. Where you're going and where you are, that can all be calibrated down the road. So in closing, what's possible, I just want you to know that whatever you're doing, Sacramento deserves for you to bring that out. I think that every one of us is harboring a great idea, a great passion, or you can be the support to someone who has a great idea or great passion. Bring it forward. Don't hold back because of fear or uncertainty or any of those things, because our community, our neighbors, the people in this room, we want to see it, we deserve it, we deserve each other's best. And I hope you bring that out, and maybe something I share today will allow for that. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop.